chose Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. I chose this because it was one of my favorite books that I read in high school, and I don't read many books as it is. So, a few miles south of Soledad, the Salinas River drops in close to the hillside bank and runs deep and green. The water is warm too, for it has slipped twinkling over the yellow sands in the sunlight before reaching the narrow pool. On one side of the river, the golden foothills slips curve up to the strong and rocky Gavilan Mountains, but on the valley's side, the water is lined up with trees. Willows fresh and green with every spring, carrying in their lower leaf junctures the debris of the winter's flooding, and sycamores with mottled, white, recumbent limbs and branches that arch over the pool. On a sandy bank under the trees, the leaves lie deep and so crisp that a lizard makes great skittering if he runs among them. Rabbits come out of the brush to sit on the sand in the evening, and the damp flats are covered with the night tracks of coons, and with the spread of pads of dogs from the ranches with the split wedge tracks of deer that come to drink in the dark. There is a path through the willows and among the sycamores, a path beaten hard by boys coming down from the ranches to swim in the deep pool, and beaten by hard tramps who come warily from the highway in the evening to jungle up near water. In front of the low horizon limb of a giant sycamore there is an ash pile made by fires. The limb is worn smooth by men who have sat on it. The evening of a hot day started a little wind moving among the leaves. The shade climbed up in the hill toward the top. On the sand banks the rabbits sat quietly as little gray sculptured stones, and then from the direction of the state highway came the sound of footsteps on crisp sycamore trees. The rabbits hurried noisily for a cover. A stittled heron labored up in the air and pounded down the river. For a moment the place was lifeless, and then two men emerged from the path and came into the opening by the green pool. They had walked in a single file from the path, and even in the open one stayed behind the door. Both were dressed in denim trousers and denim coats with brass buttons. Both wore black, shapeless hats, and both carried tight blanket rolls slung over their shoulders. The first man was small, dark of face, with restless eyes and sharp, strong features. Every part of him was defined: small, strong hands, slender arms, a thin and bony nose. Behind him walked his opposite, a huge man, shapeless of face, with large, pale eyes and wide, sloping shoulders. As he walked heavily, dragging his feet a little, the way a bear drags his paws, his arms did not swing at sides, but hung loosely. The first man stopped short in the clearing, and follower nearly ran over him. He took off his hat and wiped the sweatband with his forefinger, and snapped the moisture off. His huge companion dropped his blankets and flung himself down and drank the surface of the green pool, drank with long gulps, snorting into the water like a horse. The small man stepped nervously beside him. "Lenny," he said sharply. "Lenny, for God's sake, don't drink so much." Lenny continued to snort into the pool. The man leaned over and shook him by the shoulder. "Lenny, you're going to be sick like you were last night." Lenny dipped his whole head under, hat and all, and then he sat up on the bank and he dripped down on the blue coat and ran down his back. "That's good," he said. "You drank some, George." He took a big drink. He smiled happily. George unslung his brindle and dropped it gently on the bank. "I ain't sure it's good water," he said. "It looks kind of scummy." Lenny dabbled his big paw and wiggled his fingers so the water arose in little splashes. Rings widened across the pool to the other side and came back again. Lenny watched them go. "Look, George, look what I've done." George knelt back to the pool and drank from his hand with quick scoops. "Tastes all right," he admitted. "Don't really seem to be running, though." "You never ought to drink water when it ain't running, Lenny," he said hopelessly. "You'd drink out of a gutter if it was thirsty." He threw a scoop of water into his face and rubbed it about with his hand under the chin and around the back of his neck. Then he replaced his hat, pushed himself back from the river, drew up his knees and embraced him. Lenny, who had been watching, imitated George exactly. He pushed himself back, drew up his knees, and embraced him. Looked over to George to see whether he had just right. He pulled his hat down a little more over his eyes, the way George's hat was. George stared morosely at the water. The rims of his eyes were red with sun glare. He said angrily, "We could just as well rode clear to the ranch if that bastard bus driver knew what he was talking about." "Just a little stretch down the highway," he said. "Just a little stretch. Goddamn near 4 miles. That's what it was. Didn't want to stop at the ranch gate, that's what. Too goddamn lazy to pull up. Wonder he isn't too damn good to stop and Soledad at all. Cooks us out and says just a little stretch down the road. I bet it was more than 4 miles. Damn hot day." Lenny looked timidly over him. "George?" "Yeah, what you want?" "Where we going, George?" The little man jerked down the brim of his hat and scowled over at Lenny. So you forgot that already, did you? I gotta tell you again, do I? Jesus Christ, you're a crazy bastard. I forgot, Lenny said softly. I tried not to forget. Honest to God, I did, George.